Hello, this is a guy who likes fanfiction and is too lazy to read, so here is The Blade Breaker's Daughters in audio form. Check the description for the links to the author. Chapter 66, Byleth's Birthday. Does the professor look like she's waiting for something? Bernadetta asked Marianne, whispering as she looked at Byleth. The former mercenary was sitting at her desk, sitting up straight and looking at her students expectantly. Maybe she just wants to make sure we finish our work properly, Marianne suggested as she glanced at the sheet before them, full of questions involving night battle tactics. If it was that big of a deal, she'd say something, Lindhard said from behind the two as he let out a yawn. It's weird, I feel like there's something at the tip of my tongue but I don't know what it is, Casper muttered. Maybe we should just ask her, Flame asked, though she didn't want to be the one to do so. Why don't we just finish our work for now before assuming things about our professor? Edelgard cut in. She actually had finished her work already, so really it was everyone else that was the problem. But Edie, you have to admit she does look cute like this. You shouldn't make inappropriate comments about our professor, Dorothea, Edelgard complained, getting Dorothea to blink. Though before she could ask what Edelgard's comment was about, the bell rang, signaling the end of class. Please make sure to finish the work when you have the time, but you have until the end of class on Monday to finish it, so no rush, Byleth said, as the students began to get up. No worries, Professor, I have already finished the assignment, Ferdinand boasted as he handed the paper in. As did a few other students, minus the boasting. Thank you, Byleth said, taking the papers before pausing as she heard the door open. Dimitri. Sorry to intrude, Professor, I just came by to deliver something, the blonde prince said as he walked up to the teacher and handed her a box. Oh, thank you, Dimitri, Byleth replied as she opened the box, and found a brooch inside that had a blue gem in its center. Beside her, Edelgard heard Dorothea let out a gasp as she saw the gift, while the imperial heiress herself felt her brow furrow. Why did Dimitri suddenly bring the professor a gift? Was he competition? Was he attempting to seduce the professor? I hope it's to your liking, Professor. I had asked for some help choosing it from my classmates. On behalf of all the Blue Lions, we wish you a happy birthday. Oh, it was a birthday gift. What? That was it, Casper suddenly shouted, before running out of the classroom in a hurry. Oh, whoops. Hey, Professor, Lindhard called out, raising a hand, I forgot it was your birthday. Can I get you a gift tomorrow? That's okay, Lindhard, Byleth accepted while taking out the brooch and tilting her head as she tried to figure out where to attach it to her shirt. Great, I'll get it to you then. Or next week, when I remember. Edelgard, meanwhile, couldn't help but notice her other classmates were being less than calm about obviously forgetting their professor's birthday, judging by the frenzy of whispering she was hearing. She, however, remained perfectly calm as she pushed herself up from her desk, prompting a glance from Dorothea. Oh? So, Edie, do you happen to have something? I don't see why I would, she muttered, trying to keep her voice low. I have no obligation to get my teacher a birthday gift. Oh, so you do have something special planned then? Why do you say that? Well, otherwise you would be doing the same thing as Hubie. Edelgard paused, then glanced towards the front and saw Hubert inclining his head towards the professor. Happy birthday, Professor. Congratulations on living for another year. Thank you, Hubert. That's good enough, Edelgard mumbled, before her eyes narrowed, because of course that wasn't good enough. She may not have an obligation to give a gift to her professor, but she was a princess of Adrestia, she could most definitely give a better gift than just some well wishes. Dorothea blinked as Edelgard pushed away from the desk and left the classroom, trying to avoid looking hurried as she practically fled the room. Well, no need to comment on that when she's not around to hear it. Now, what to do for our lovely professor? While Dorothea considered her plans for the professor's birthday and Edelgard continued to not hurry her way to the markets, the rest of the eagles scattered across the monastery grounds, some quicker than others, as they tried to figure out what would work as a gift for the professor's birthday. As the students left the classroom in a hurry, Casper came running back into the classroom, holding a small box which he handed to Byleth. Sorry about that, Professor, it completely slipped my mind, the young man apologized. "It's okay," Byleth said with a smile as she opened the box, finding a new whetstone in it. "Hope you like it, Professor. It probably won't help much with a relic weapon, but I'm sure it'll still be handy." "Thank you, Casper," Byleth said, her smile widening. "I've been meaning to get a new one." "Ha, nice. Glad I got something good," he said, before looking around. "Hey, where'd everyone go?" he asked, getting Byleth to shrug. Sometime later, as she chatted with Shay while they went to get something to eat, they were approached by Flayn, who seemed to be out of breath as she came running up to them. Professor. Here you go," Flayn said, after taking in some deep breaths, and handing her a book of fables. "I hope you like it." "Thank you, Flayn, I'll make sure to read it when I have the time," Byleth replied, getting the young girl to smile brightly, happy that her gift worked well. "PFT, she seemed like she was in a rush," Shay commented once Flayn scurried away. "I think they forgot it was my birthday," Byleth explained as they continued walking, "so they're rushing around." "Oh, wow. Well, this'll be fun," Shay said, smiling too, though her smile was a bit more mischievous. She was perfectly happy to stick by her sister's side so she could see the rest of the students scamper around, desperate to look like they'd remembered. Which went about as well as she expected, since, mid-lunch, Happy came up to them, and handed Byleth an arithmetic textbook. "Here you go, Chatterbox. It's from Yuri and me," she said, walking away before Byleth could thank her. "Huh. Well, least it's nice," Shay guessed as Byleth opened the book, and immediately noticed writing in the margins that made it seem like Yuri had the book for some time. It's the thought that counts. Professor. Bernadetta yelled out to the sisters as she came scampering towards them, only to trip on the way over. The bag she held in her hands flew into the air, only for Byleth to swiftly catch her student, steadying her and grabbing the bag before it could hit the ground. Sorry. "It's okay," Byleth replied, before looking at the bag in her hand. "Is this for me?" "Oh, only if you want it," Bernadetta said, blushing before she squirmed free of Byleth's grip and ran away, calling over her shoulder as she went. I hope you enjoy it. I really need to apologize to her for leaving her in the training grounds that one time," Shay muttered, getting Byleth's attention as she opened the bag and found some cookies in it. "What happened?" I'll explain later," Shay said, before reaching over to try and grab one of Byleth's treats, only to pout as Byleth moved the bag away. Rude. Leaving the mess hall after finishing their food, the duo were soon approached by Marianne, who kept her eyes down. I am sorry for forgetting your birthday, Professor," she murmured as she handed over an owl feather that seemed to have been made into a charm. "I hope this makes you up for it." Hilda helped me make it." "No need to apologize, Marianne," Byleth said, taking the charm. "And thank you, it looks lovely." Bowing to her, Marianne left, seemingly flustered. Someone's really popular," Shay teased. "I'm just glad my students like me." "There is much to be liking about you," Petra noted as she walked up, a book in hand. "Here you are, Professor, I hope you are having much to learn from this." Looking at the book, Byleth noted that it seemed to be a book about Brigid's language. "Thank you, Petra, this is lovely. I am glad you are enjoying my gift. If you need any help with understanding, you must only ask." "Of course. There you are, my attendant," Constance said, coming up with a wide smile, being her bright self thanks to there being an overcast sky that day. "I hope you're ready, for I, Constance von Novelli, have the greatest present for you." "Just to make sure, is this another experiment?" "Of course not. Unless you would prefer helping me with another experiment." "Maybe tomorrow," Byleth said, before Constance led them back to the courtyard. "Here we go, this should be the perfect area for it," Constance declared, smiling as she faced the two sisters. "Now, I hope you are ready for a dazzling Novelli performance." With a flick of her fan, a fireball formed above it, before it went straight up into the air, exploding midair as it formed Constance's crest. Feeling their eyes widen, both Byleth and Shay watched in awe as Constance began sending more fireballs into the air, each one of them bursting in the air to form different symbols, before ending with the familiar sight of the twin-headed black eagle. And such is the grand magic of House Novelli. Constance, that was amazing. Shay immediately cheered as Byleth clapped. Very impressive. I'd love to see it again. Heh, well, I hope you're ready for when I perform this again. Next time it won't just be fire dash. Constance. What do you think you're doing? Seath yelled out, as he marched up to the trio. Well, I was just performing my magic for dash. Recklessly firing magic into the air can get people hurt. Sorry about that, Seath, Byleth apologized in her stead. Constance just wanted to perform something for my birthday. I should have asked her to do this elsewhere. Oh, is that so? Seath asked, a bit surprised at the news. His gaze seemed to soften for a moment, much to the sisters' surprise. As thanks for saving Flayn, I'll let you off easily. Though don't do something like this without permission. Oh, of course, my apologies, Constance said, trying not to anger the Chamberlain before she hurried off. Well, that could have ended better, Shay muttered. Hopefully Constance is up to do that again, cause that was fun. It would be nice if she did. There you are, Professor. Ferdinand shouted, a smile on his face as he came up to them. I had noticed that your armor looked like it was getting worn out, so I wanted to give you some new oil and wax. The young noble said with a smile as he handed the gift over. Oh, thank you, Ferdinand. That's very thoughtful. Glad you like it. Ferdinand smiled once again before bowing to the two. Guess that means it's my turn. Blinking, the two sisters saw Dorothea walking up to the two. I'm a bit disappointed I didn't get to you earlier, cause Constance already had a performance for you, but I hope you still like mine. Oh? What's that? Heh, well, it's not every day someone gets a personal performance from a songstress of the Middelfranc Opera Company, though you're free to join in watching if you want, Shezzy. Nah, I just remembered I have something to do. Hope you two have fun. Shay said, smiling at the two as she waved them off. Well, that's not surprising. I knew she didn't really get opera stuff, but it's a shame she turned down the offer. I can talk to her later if you want. PFT, no need, Professor. Now come on, let's go find someplace nice for this. Walking back through the monastery after managing to order and purchase a gift for the professor, Edelgard did her best to not seem like she was looking for Byleth. Sure, she might have paid extra to get the gift made as soon as possible, but it was only to thank the professor for all the help she gave them. Really, it was like a gift from all the Black Eagles and not just her. Such was the reason that she had the pendant bear the mark of the Black Eagles. Taking in a deep breath, she put the box into her pocket as she began to look around. From what she could see, everyone else in the class had already given her a gift, which meant hers was the only one left. Well, aside from Lindhart, but who knows when he'd gift her something. Though, was it odd for her to be the last one? It was a bit late to think so, but being the last one meant she'd likely think of her gift the most. Not that she wanted her to think of her, of course. Really, this gift was just an obligation, since she was the house leader, and Byleth was their professor. Pausing as she heard someone singing, Edelgard looked over and saw Dorothea seemingly performing a solo act to their professor, who was smiling enraptured in her performance. Not that she could blame her, Dorothea was a famous songstress for a reason, and her months away from the opera company did little to nothing when it came to rusting her skill. Seeing the performance come to an end, Edelgard waited, not waiting to interrupt. So, what did you think, Professor? It was amazing. Even if it was just you by yourself, this was far beyond the play my family saw when I was young. Well, I was just starting out back then, so of course I'd get better. You definitely did. I hope I get to hear you sing again. My, you are quite the flatterer, Dorothea said, with a teasing grin. If I didn't know any better, I'd say you were serious when you said you'd take care of me. Edelgard didn't quite know how to react to that. The immediate reaction was a strange sense of hurt, but she immediately pushed that down under the obvious reality that she had no context for the conversation Dorothea was referring to. Add in the songstress's teasing nature and the fact that Edelgard had no cause to even feel hurt in this circumstance, and it made no sense to react poorly to a simple teasing comment. I wouldn't mind, Byleth replied, and that gave Edelgard some pause because that was harder to disregard. Dorothea sighed though. Really, Professor, don't get a girl's hopes up, oh? Oh, hello, Edie. Ah, she was noticed. Edelgard composed herself and stepped forward, nodding to Dorothea first before facing her professor. Hello, Professor. On behalf of the Black Eagle's house, I would like to give you a present for your birthday. Thank you for your efforts as an instructor thus far. And with that said, she presented her gift, contained in a velvet-lined case. She held it out to the professor, who took it, and then Edelgard had to fight down any reaction when she saw the bright, happy smile that appeared on her professor's face. Thank you very much, Edelgard. She took the pendant from the box and held it up, staring at the Black Eagle on the pendant with a small smile before she set the box down and put the pendant on. As I said, it was a gift from the class as a whole, Edelgard reiterated while trying to ignore how the pendant sat on Byleth's chest, and also fighting down a flash of irritation when she noticed her professor had also pinned that stupid brooch Dimitri got her to her shirt. And I think it is better to show your affiliation to the class you are actually teaching. Oh, okay. Should I wear this all the time then? Edelgard grimaced, wondering why that question happened to make her face warm up. Do what you want with it. It's your gift. Okay. I'll make sure to wear it then. If that is what you want. It is. Good, then. If that is all, I should be going. Edelgard did not run away from her professor. She kept very composed as she left her professor to her own devices, and tried her best not to sigh when Dorothea said her goodbyes and followed right after her. So, a gift from the whole class, That is what I said, yes. One that happens to bear the specific heraldry of House Hresvelg. The Black Eagle on a red background is the symbol of the Black Eagle House. It represents the house at the monastery, not the imperial household. Really? So that little eagle didn't happen to have two heads. Edelgard actually paused for a moment there, thinking back to the pendant and wondering, for a second, if she actually did give the professor a pendant with a two-headed eagle on it, which would send the exact wrong signals she wasn't trying to send at all. The eagle on the flag is gold, there's a difference. Is everything okay, Edie? You're acting a bit strange today. There is nothing odd about how I am acting. Sure, I mean, it's not like you've always gotten flustered before whenever I brought up you and the professor. As the future emperor of Adristria, pursuing any form of relationship with a mercenary would be improper. Right, and what about all that stuff about you changing the empire and doing away with the nobility system? I'm pretty sure if there are no nobles, it wouldn't matter if the emperor got with a mercenary. I am doing that for the betterment of the empire, not to pursue some flight of fancy, Edelgard responded, making Dorothea frown. Edie, come on, you need to tell me what's up. I can't help you if I don't know what's wrong. There is nothing up, Dorothea. It is simply the truth of the matter. My dream comes first before all else, and I must devote myself to it until I achieve it. Edie, you really shouldn't lie to yourself like this. I'm not, thank you for your concern, Dorothea, but I am perfectly fine, Edelgard said, ending the conversation then and there before marching away. This was how things were meant to be. Even if her classmates and professor agreed to help her wage war against the church, she would still be the emperor who brought the end to many. Let them find comfort amongst themselves as she carried the burden alone. Ah, Lady Edelgard, there you are. Well, maybe not completely alone. Edelgard smiled slightly as she turned to see Hubert. Hello, Hubert. I was wondering where you were. I should say the same for you. Why did you go running off the marketplace earlier? Edelgard cleared her throat, her face reddening a little. I will admit, I forgot that it was the professor's birthday. I wanted to keep it in mind, but, well, with everything that happened. Ah, I see. Well, there's no need to worry, we can simply say my gift is from the both of us. No, I did manage to commission your gift. He nodded. Yes, I had no plans to originally do so, but after learning of her contributions to the Empire, I elected to send her a tome of rare magics that was in House Vestra's possession. I believe it should be adequate for her needs, given her abilities as a mage. That's better than my gift. Hubert blinked. Pardon. Edelgard didn't respond, instead stomping off in an aggravated huff because apparently she couldn't trust anyone in this damn academy. Well, I think this is the first time I've ever seen you this happy, Suthies commented as she floated behind Byleth, who was busy placing all her new gifts on her desk, from Casper's whetstone to the very pretty black and red tome Hubert had sent her. Everything aside from her pendant, of course. Edelgard wanted her to wear it, so she was going to keep it on. Today was really nice, Byleth said, smiling down at the pendant as she held it up, studying the little eagle on it. Interesting that it had 2 heads instead of 1. Maybe the crafter made a mistake? She kind of liked it though, it gave it a kind of unique look. I can tell. You've had quite the foolish grin on your face ever since you received that pendant you're so enamored with. I like it. No need to pout at me, I didn't say it was a bad thing. Byleth wasn't pouting though. Though you may wish to rethink your promise of wearing it at all times. You wouldn't want to accidentally crush it while sleeping. I don't think I could do that. Could I? Your chest is heavy enough to. Byleth blinked at that, and would have responded if a knock on the door hadn't caught her attention. She headed over and felt another smile come to her face as she saw 3 very familiar faces standing on the other side. Surprise! Shay and Leonie shouted, both of them grinning as Geralt chuckled. Happy birthday, Byleth! Byleth giggled, a bright, happy smile on her face at her family's appearance. Thank you very much. Then she blinked, noticing the stunned looks on Geralt and Shay's faces. Even Leonie looked a little surprised. Is something wrong? No, not at all, Geralt answered, his smile returning full force as Shay abruptly gave Byleth a big hug. Byleth blinked again as her sister hoisted her up, Shay's own laughter echoing out as she swung her around. All right, let her down, Geralt requested, I know it's a big deal, but you can't carry her to the party. I bet I could. Shay immediately replied, prompting an amused noise from Leonie and a pout from Byleth. Let me down. Nope. Kman, the party's in town. Leonie laughed as she saw her friend start carrying her sister off towards town, before glancing up at Geralt. So, this might be a weird question, but was that the first time Byleth has ever laughed? It is, yeah. Geralt sighed fondly as he watched his kids. Shay had a big grin on her face as she still carried her sister along while Byleth wasn't really resisting, though she did keep poking Shay's forehead to show her disapproval. You might have noticed, but Byleth has never been that good with emotions. The fact that she's laughing, well, I guess this place is better for her than I expected. Heh. Welcome, Captain, we can't be left behind here. Leonie insisted, grabbing Geralt's wrist and pulling him along. All right, don't tug so hard. I'm an old man here, he mock complained, following along as they all headed down to a nice tavern he'd found. Technically, the students weren't supposed to be going out into the town outside the monastery, but being the Knights Captain had at least some perks to it. He did end up in trouble when both Leonie and Byleth wound up completely wasted though, while Shay complained about not being able to drink a drop herself. It was a good thing the next day was an off day as they both ended up nursing a hangover. You never forget your first one, and it definitely seemed neither of the two would as they spent most of the day in their rooms. Maybe he should teach them about moderation when he got the chance, even if it was a lesson he himself didn't follow. Chapter 67, The Consequences of Indulgence. Byleth's head hurt. That was the main thing she could think about when she woke up again. Just, absolute agony in her head, and that was even with her deliberately keeping all sources of light covered after she woke up earlier and found that the sun wanted to kill her. The sun doesn't want to kill you, it's an inanimate ball of hot gas floating in the sky, Suthies chided, which earned a whine from Byleth as she buried herself further in her den of blankets and pillows. Ugh, seriously? You know you have to get up at some point. MNHHGHL, Byleth replied, making a very articulate point about how it was a free day and she had no obligations to get up at all. It wasn't even a holiday, there was no feast or event, she had zero reason to do anything but skip the day entirely. You can't just skip a day. You need to actually get up and do things. You have bodily functions that need to be taken care of. HHHHHHH, Byleth responded, complaining that her own body was clearly desiring rest above all other things, and stating that the annoying girl in her head should shut up for a bit. You only have yourself to blame, you know. Though, honestly, what was your father thinking, letting you drink so much? MFH Byleth peeked up from her covers, frowning up at Suthies. She didn't mind that her dad let her try every drink on the menu, and she didn't blame him for having fun either, though she was having a bit of trouble remembering exactly what she did. Let's see, went to the tavern with Leonie, Shay, and her dad. Met up with the usual crowd of mercenaries and also Eloise, who was there too. She vaguely remembered him making friends with the mercenaries, and she was pretty sure Victor and Candace actually laughed at his jokes, which probably contributed to them extending the invitation for him to join up if things didn't work out with the knights. Eloise had been flattered, but insisted he couldn't, on account of how he had a family to support and his own vows of knighthood. Sorry to say, he said, but I just can't afford to be a mercenary. Why, my wife would be so angry if I left just like that. I'd be begging for forgiveness so much I'd be a mercenary. Byleth groaned, the very memory of that stupid joke bringing her actual physical pain in the moment. I swear, you're ridiculous, Suthies complained, you're a grown woman, you can't just laze around all day and year. Then there was a knock at the door and Byleth winced again, before letting out a slow sigh. It was one thing to complain to Suthies, but if someone actually needed her for something, she probably should get up. So the professor pushed herself up from the bed, ignoring the faint ache in her head as she fumbled for a glass of water at her bedside. She drank, then poured the rest of it over her head in an attempt to wake herself up better. After a moment of shaking the water out from her hair, Byleth finally stood from the bed completely and grabbed her coat. The usual grey one, not the darker one she'd received as a present from the Mercs, though she did plan to wear that one when she had the opportunity. For now though, she pushed her arms through the sleeves, enjoying the faint bit of cozy feeling they provided, before heading over to her door and opening it up. Hello. Byleth rasped. She didn't expect her voice to sound so rough, but she was tired so it could be excused. Edelgard, on the other side, stared at her. Byleth blinked, a little blearily, before covering her mouth as a yawn slipped out. Sorry. I drank too much last night. My family wanted to celebrate my birthday and we went to a tavern. I see. Sorry, I'm a little out of it right now. Did you need anything? She furrowed her brow. It is a free day today, right? I didn't miss class. No, you did not miss class, Professor. I think you should close the door right now. The non sequitur took a moment for Byleth to parse and she stared at Edelgard in some confusion after her words registered. Why? I thought you wanted to talk. You're in a state of undress right now, Professor. Please close the door. Byleth blinked. She glanced down at herself. She promptly shut the door. On the other side, Edelgard took a deep, calming breath as she tried very hard to forget what she had just seen. She most definitely did not dwell on how adorable her teacher looked with a messy bedhead, nor did she think about the fact that her teacher was still wearing the pendant Edelgard had given her. No, those topics were entirely too innocent for her brain to be focusing on at the moment, and then she shook her head because she was fairly certain that was the exact reverse of what she was intending. She could dwell on her professor's messy hair or the fact she still liked her pendant. She could even take note of the fact that her professor also seemed to be wearing a bangle around her wrist that had a golden deer on it. Those were perfectly normal things to think about, rather than the apparent fact that her professor preferred to sleep in very little clothing, or the somewhat interesting revelation that her professor's favorite colors appeared to be pink and navy blue. Edelgard decided to leave. Checking up on her professor could come later, when said professor was wearing more clothing. A few moments after she left, Byleth opened the door, now actually wearing clothes she could go out in public in, before blinking as she saw that no one was there. Oh. She hoped she didn't scare her off. Happy birthday, Dorothea, Byleth greeted a few days later as she handed her student a magical tome. Oh, thank you, Professor. Dorothea replied, smiling as she took the book. I have to say, this isn't something I usually get as a gift. Is it bad? Byleth asked, frowning. Oh no, of course not. People just tend to gift me with jewels and the like, Dorothea explained, thinking about all the nobles hoping to win her favor. So it's a bit refreshing actually. Speaking of, I see you're still wearing Edie's gift. Well, she did ask me to wear it, Byleth replied as a small frown appeared on her face. Is everything okay, Professor? Is everything okay with Edelgard? Byleth asked. Thinking about another girl on my birthday. Sorry, Byleth apologized, a bit of worry in her voice. I just think she's been avoiding me. She has. Yeah, outside of class she hasn't really been talking to me. She even declined having tea together. Really? Honestly, what are you thinking, Edie? Dorothea muttered. Well, while I'm not sure why exactly she's doing this, I can assure you it's nothing against you. Are you sure? Yeah, Edie is just being a bit stubborn right now, Dorothea said with a sigh. Byleth frowned. Do you have any idea how to help her? Well, it might help if you tell her what you think of her. What I think of her? Yes. Like, say, whether you like her or not. I do like her, she's my student. Well, that's not exactly what I meant. Like, have you ever looked at her and felt your heart skip a beat? My heart doesn't beat, Byleth responded with a frown. Dorothea huffed. Professor, be serious. I want to know if you have any affections for Edie. Ones that go beyond teacher and student. Byleth continued to frown, though it was more thoughtful. I don't think I understand the question. She's my student. Dorothea sighed and grumbled something under her breath that Byleth didn't quite catch. Something about someone being oblivious? Professor, is there anything in particular you like about Edie? Anything in particular, she's very smart and determined. When she sets her mind to something, she's going to do it no matter how difficult the task is. I think that's admirable. Not exactly what I meant, Professor, though I can agree. Professor, you might be teasing me when it comes to taking care of me when I grow old, but what if Edie were to ask you that? Byleth blinked, taking a second to parse that question, before looking at Dorothea with some concern. Is Edelgard in trouble? Dorothea placed her hands over her face and sighed again, trying to avoid showing her professor just how incredibly exasperated she was. What if Edie offered to take care of you, Professor? I don't think I can work for her until my contract with the church expires. I wouldn't mind working for her in an official capacity though. Dorothea dragged her hands down her face, then fixed Byleth with a very direct stare. Professor, do you have any romantic interest in Edie? Byleth blinked at the unexpectedly blunt question, then actually considered it. I don't think so. She frowned. I don't know what romantic affection feels like. I know I love my dad and Shay because they're my family, and I like all of my students. I'm not sure what it would feel like to be attracted to someone in that way, so I don't know if I could even recognize it. Well, that's disappointing, Dorothea commented, pouting. Sorry. No, it's not your fault. I'm the one getting silly ideas in my head here. It's okay. My emotions just work weirdly sometimes. I'm getting better at it. Dorothea didn't really know how to reply to that, especially with how earnest the professor sounded. Well then, why don't we save the talk of romance for later then? If Edie's so unwilling to have your usual tea time, perhaps I could substitute. Oh, sure, if you want to. You like the sweet apple and albinine berry blends, right? That I do. You know, it really is impressive how many things you keep memorized. Byleth shrugged, a little more comfortable now that she was on a more familiar conversation topic. Part of my job is making sure everyone is happy and healthy, so I just keep the things that make people happy in my mind. I wonder, does that come from being a mercenary captain's daughter, or is it just a natural talent? As the two made their way towards the gardens and continued their conversation, Byleth did feel her mind drifting back to the earlier topic. What did romantic attraction feel like? And, could she be attracted to her student? Was that even possible? She needed to think about this more. Oh great, I can already tell this is going to be a bigger thing than it should be, Suthies muttered, faintly annoyed. It's important, Byleth responded, frowning. I need to take my students' feelings seriously. Ugh, I suppose. Well, at least you don't have anything else to worry about right now. In the middle of the night, a light shuffling could be heard in the library as a certain sage disguised as a priestess pored over several tomes. Beasts though they might be, Bias had to admit the people living freely up here certainly knew a thing or two when it came to magic. Not much, they were still far behind the Agarthans when it came to sorcery and technology, but it was still enough for the sage to begin building new theorems as she studied. Though, as she read through the tomes she had acquired, her mind drifted to Kronia, and how the little puppy was clearly frightened. She wasn't even trying to be subtle in trying to gain new allies. Nevertheless, it was fun seeing her scramble around, so she would let her live, for now. Not to mention that, with just the right words, Kronia would still prove a valuable source of information on the young, ignorant whelp called Shay. Chuckling to herself, Bias began to wonder who she should target next. If it wasn't the wayward stray who killed her sister, then it was likely someone else who worked for Cleobulus, though the question of who did the foul deed was still a mystery. One she intended on solving. The sound of a door opening broke her out of her thoughts. Looking over, she suppressed a scowl at the sight of the purple-haired brat. Schooling herself, she put on a slight smile. I'm sorry, but the library. A purple flash of light cut her off as Bias found herself knocked onto the floor, the student pinning her down as she felt a blade against her neck. Explain to me why you killed Solon. Bias glanced at the blade at her throat, noting the design, then glanced up at the girl pinning her down. Her eyes were fully orange and glowing with a fiery intensity that illuminated the white markings on her face. Huh. You don't have the power of Epimenides, you are Epimenides. An obvious deduction. Answer my question, the great sage ordered in a very different voice from the stray's usual tone, pressing the blade closer. Solon showed no care for Thales's death. It meant the possibility of him being the one to murder our leader rose to a level I found unacceptable. And even if he wasn't, I found his callous attitude warranted his removal from his position, Bias answered quite readily, still regarding those fiery eyes with more interest than apprehension. I see. Who was Pittacus to you? That question prompted a frown. My twin. We were born together, from the same source. And that is the real reason you killed him then. An emotional reaction to his disregard of your sister's demise. Epimenides let the sword fade with an annoyed sigh. A remarkably volatile reaction for a sage, though I cannot say it is uncharacteristic for those of your position. Fire best lends itself to passion in the old schools of thought. Regardless, your murder of your fellow sage was foolhardy and detrimental to the cause of our people. Perhaps. I am endeavoring to make up for that unfortunate loss, she stated, before regarding the great sage with some curiosity. So what is this, exactly? I can hear from the timbre of your voice that you are not Shay. The girl's personality appears to be distinct from your own as well, so you are not simply wearing her flesh? Shay is my vessel, Epimenides answered, gazing down at her as he stood. That I exist within her is a strange yet fortunate circumstance, particularly with the coincidence that is her relationship to the fell star. Ah. Her sister then. The idea explained things. Not how the fell star could have returned, but it did explain the professor's stranger qualities. Epimenides sneered, disgust visible on the face he wore. Correct. I will not fault my vessel for her ignorance, though it will need to be corrected. A fraction of myself had been attempting to encourage her down the proper path prior to my awakening, yet she is a willful girl prone to stubbornness. Regardless, the time is not right. The fell star has gifted its vessel with powers that would make a direct attack unfeasible in most circumstances. Which means I must either finish her off in one blow, or, should that fail, use the spell of Zaris. At his words, Bias stiffened and shuffled back. Ah, so you do know about it. Solon has mentioned it, but as far as I'm aware he was the only remaining Agarthan who knew the spell. What a foolish man he was then, to keep such secrets. A truly unfortunate tendency among those who hold such knowledge, Epimenides remarked almost wistfully. Even if the spell is forbidden, keeping the knowledge to oneself means it is gone once you perish. There is another you can dash. You still have your uses, I won't use you for the spell. As for that other one, what is her name? Kronia. She was Thales's lapdog, and from the newest generation of Agarthans, of the caste Belators, Bias explained, not wanting to anger the great sage. And who remains from my time? She shrugged. I don't know. Do the names Cleobulus and Mycen mean anything to you? I see, the Agarthan people truly have fallen since I've been gone, Epimenides noted as he sighed. Bias felt a prickle of offense, but buried it down. What is your plan, great sage? For now, we must bide our time, so that we may strike when the time is right. Until then, I'll be the one contacting you if need be, he said, before looking at Bias. And I suppose you want the full truth of what occurred. Who was it? Who else but the fell star? Snarling, Bias felt flames burst from her hands, before Epimenides placed his blade against her throat again. Do not attack her. The powers she has are too grand to underestimate. We will have our revenge, but until then, you must wait. Feeling her hands tighten up into fists, Bias made the flames dissipate. Good. Now, are you in contact with Cleobulus or Mycen? I can contact Mycen, she responded, fighting down the rage that came with realizing that bitch of a princess had lied to her. Did she know all along? She had to, that's why she lied. Everyone's a fucking liar. Cleobulus, on the other hand, hasn't attempted to contact us back. It is my belief she has gone rogue. Much like you have. At her flinch, he sighed. Do not fear so readily, I shall not harm one of my people without due cause. You have due cause, she noted, prompting a slight smile from the great sage. I do, yet I am a forgiving man. For now, I have need of your aid. Prove yourself and there shall be no need for punishment, Epimenides said as he began to walk away, though he paused after a moment. Ah, but one last thing. Yes, great sage. Bias asked, only to stiffen as he turned his gaze towards her, glaring intently. Never harm my vessel again. Leaving without waiting for a response, Epimenides made his way back to his vessel's bedroom. In the silence of the night, he couldn't help but chuckle at the situation. To think, the vessels of the great sage and of the fell star would end up being raised together as siblings. The cycle of this world was truly a cruel one. And behind him, watching with eyes filled with a growing hate, remained the Sage of Flames, who felt an increasing urge to burn it all down. Chapter 68, Speaking of Romance. Now then, I suppose we should actually fill you in on the details for the Battle of Eagle and Lion, Manuela said as the three professors sat together for a meal, though I suppose if I don't, that'll just give my class another edge. Manuela. Don't try to sabotage our fellow professor. Hanneman reprimanded, frowning towards his colleague, before an amused smile crossed his face. The smarter move is to be open and honest and make sure our newest colleague feels indebted to her wise senior who so generously explained everything. So, on that topic. Oh, so sabotage is too much, but bribery is just fine. It is not bribery, I am simply doing a favor to my colleague. And if she wants to return that favor. Now it just sounds like you're splitting hairs. I'm doing no such thing, now stop interrupting me. I'm just pointing out the hypocrisy in your dash. So what was that about the battle? Byleth interrupted, not wanting the two to start arguing again. Oh, right, well for comparison, the battle will be a mock battle like the one we had at the start of the year. Of course it'll be far above that one in scale and grandeur, Manuela explained. For starters, all the students will be competing, and while us professors will be participating, it is the house leaders who will be taking the role of field commanders, Hanneman elaborated, to show how far they have come from the start of the year. Though it should be noted that you can't just focus on protecting the commander. Unlike the mock battle, this one will be using a point system. Every opponent one of your students defeats will be a point, while professors count as 5 points. And the house leaders? Byleth asked. 5 as well, but should the house leader fall, that house will immediately have to withdraw. So you can't just play it safe and wait for the other 2 houses to take each other out. It's not fun that way, after all, Manuela added, prompting an eye roll from Hanneman, though he thankfully didn't decide to argue with her. Another thing to keep in mind is that each house will be given an additional squad of soldiers, to better help simulate war while making it so it's not just the students. Though of course, everyone will have blunted weaponry. Byleth rubbed her chin, thinking. And what about positioning? That was actually determined by random chance, Manuela chimed in. A map should be delivered to you later showing the field so as to better prepare for the battle, as well as the starting position of all of our classes. There will also be a prize for the class that performs the best, Hanneman added, though I would like to note that the prize should not be the main goal. Is that why your class hasn't been able to win for the past 2 years? Just to be clear, there's not going to be any mission this month, right? Byleth cut in before they could start arguing. Oh, no. Aside from your usual lessons, you're free to do as you wish to prepare for the battle with no worry about a mission this month. Good to know. Now then, do you have any questions? Not really. Though I was hoping to talk to you in private later, Manuela, Byleth added, hoping she wouldn't be busy. Of course, I'd be glad to. Please take care not to fall for any scheming Manuela might plan, Hanneman requested, getting her to gasp. I would never dream of scheming up something when my colleague comes looking to me for advice. Manuela scolded him as Byleth began to tune out the conversation. She did like her colleagues, but at the same time listening to them argue could get a bit annoying. Thankfully the argument didn't go on for too long, and Byleth found herself in Manuela's office. So, what exactly did you need? How do I know what romantic attraction is like? Well, that's certainly a question to ask. Are you interested in someone? I don't think so. Someone asked me if I was interested in someone in particular, and I felt odd not knowing if I was or not. I know I can find someone attractive, but I've never actually felt interested in someone. Letting out a sigh, Manuela leaned back in her chair. Well, this is certainly heavier than I thought it'd be. Sorry. No need to apologize, we all have our own troubles in our own way. Honestly, I'm surprised you came to me to ask this question, given my own track record. It felt weird wanting to talk about this with Geralt or any of the mercenaries. I get that. Just to make sure, you were taught about the Pegasus and the Wyverns, correct? I was. Gertrude made sure to teach us. Oh, that's great. I definitely didn't want to have that conversation, Manuela said, letting out a laugh. So, I'm assuming you've never dated anyone. Never stuck around in one place long enough to do so. I suppose that's the trouble with being a wandering mercenary. Manuela hummed. Well, for starters, there's nothing wrong about not knowing what you like. Plenty of people spend their whole lives thinking one thing only to realize what they actually like when they're older. Hell, I've met people who are perfectly fine without romance or the like. It would be easier if I at least knew if I liked something or not. Well, take this advice with a grain of salt from someone who's met plenty of people who don't like her. If you want to know if you like something, you should try to experience it first. So, I should try dating someone. Not right away, but it would help you realize something about yourself. There's only so much one can learn from observing. Okay. Byleth nodded. Thank you for the advice, Manuela. Anytime, my fellow professor. I may not be all that lucky in love myself, but my door's always open if you want to chit-chat about matters of the heart. Byleth nodded and thanked her fellow professor for her time again before she headed out, still thinking to herself about the strange reality of romantic attraction she was now aware of. Sure, she was used to her sister trying to get involved in her love life before, but it was always something that seemed distant and unimportant. Maybe she should take Manuela's advice. Please don't tell me you're going to just ask the first person you see on a date, Sothis said, her tone already full of exasperation. I wasn't going to do that. At least now she wasn't. At the very least. I should probably ask someone I know, right? Don't ask me that, Sothis complained, before their conversation was interrupted. Professor, there you are. Glancing over, Byleth could see Dorothea approaching while an exasperated-looking Ingrid followed her. We need your help. What's wrong? It's nothing, Professor, Ingrid got out before Dorothea spoke up again. It's not nothing. Some jerk is trying to marry Ingrid. You have to help us, that man's entire fortune is soaked in blood. It is. Only according to rumors. Rumors which I might add only Dorothea has brought up. Well, we should check out, just to make sure, right? Byleth asked. Better safe than sorry. Exactly. Thank you, Professor. You two wait here, I'll go see if I can find anyone else to help us. With that, Dorothea sped off, leaving the two behind. Honestly, what is with that girl? We've hardly even talked and she seems so invested already. Dorothea is like that, Byleth noted as they waited. She cares easily and I think marriage is important to her. So I think she wants to be able to help make sure your marriage is good. I suppose so. Still, I apologize for bothering you, Professor. You saved me once, and I might end up owing you another depending on how things go. It's no bother. You might not be one of my students, but you're still a student nonetheless. Though if you do want to make it up to me, you can always transfer over so the Blue Lions aren't as strong for the battle. While I will admit it would be interesting to learn from you, I'd rather not leave my classmates floundering, Ingrid joked back as they waited for Dorothea to return. Though Byleth couldn't help but wonder just how difficult it would be to find out stuff about this would-be suitor. So it was laughably easy to find out stuff about this guy. It was as if he didn't even try hiding his illegal activities. Everything from bribery, to threats, to even hiring assassins to deal with rivals. He was almost laughably evil. So, I know I'm the last person you probably want to hear this from, but I think your dad really needs to be more thorough with background checks, Sylvain said as he rode by Ingrid. Ingrid sighed, looking frustrated. I realize. What gets me though is that it was just so obvious. How can there be a noble this corrupt and still in power? Dorothea tried not to snort. It would go against her image. I'm sorry to ruin your image of the world, Ingrid, but Adrestian nobles in general do tend to be this bad. And here I was, trying to look past my prejudices, she sighed again, before tugging slightly at her shirt with an uncomfortable look. That aside, we probably should have picked a different route to take back to the monastery. What, can't stand the heat? Shay teased from her own steed, looking amused by the discomfort the Phaergon members of their little group were displaying as they passed through the Valley of Torment, paradoxically one of the most treacherous yet also safest routes to take up to the monastery, in large part because no bandit group wanted to hang around the volcanic landscape. Just think of this like training. If you can get used to something like this, then wearing armor in hot weather won't be a problem. Casper shouted, wiping away his own sweat. I have a feeling you two are taking this as revenge for when you had to go up to the kingdom. Annette muttered, not faring the best while Mercedes seemed to be doing a bit better after she removed her shawl. I have to admit, it is a bit much. I have to say, I always imagined the name, Valley of Torment, was exaggerated. I guess it really isn't, Ash muttered, as he looked around the volcanic area. So what do you want us to do when we get back, Ingrid? Byleth asked, glancing at the blonde student. Isn't it obvious? We're gonna go kick his ass. Shay shouted, before Ingrid shook her head. For now, I think it would be best to send this information to my father. If we were to attack my suitor right away, then it'll only end up putting pressure on my father. But we can probably attack him afterwards, Sylvain said with a wink. For once I find myself in agreement with you, Dorothea teased. Hey, I'll take what I can get. Ingrid rolled her eyes. Ugh, let's just get back to the monastery already. Not so fast, you brats. Shouted a rough voice, catching their attention as they saw a group of bandits in their path. Hand over the girl. Does he mean me? Ingrid asked, already gripping her spear as her Pegasus began to flap its wings. I bet that noble hired them. Annette shouted. Here to take Ingrid and make sure we can't talk, Dorothea muttered, a sigil already forming as she got ready to cast a spell. Though, before anyone could make a move, Byleth frowned as she stared off into the distance. Ingrid, can your steed handle too? Byleth asked, already getting off her own horse. At her nod, Byleth continued. Dorothea, get on with her. Their main target will be Ingrid, so we have to make sure she's covered. Oh, of course. Dorothea immediately moved to get on the same Pegasus as Ingrid, pressing up against the blonde's back as she settled in. I hope you don't mind me being so close. I'm fine with it, just try to keep your focus, Ingrid replied, before glancing back at Byleth. Are we just trying to escape them, Professor? You are. You're their priority, so we need to get you to a safe distance. Sylvain, Annette, Mercedes, and Ash, all of you stay with Ingrid and eliminate any threats that get close. Shay and Casper, you're with me. What are you going to be doing, Professor? Ash asked, readying his bow as he moved up towards the front of their formation with Sylvain. Killing every other bandit before they can get to you. All right. Now that's a plan I can get behind. Casper exclaimed, ready and eager. Sounds good to me. Shay agreed, hopping off her own horse and drawing her swords, which did get Byleth to pause in thought for a moment. We should do some mounted combat training after this. At the very least, everyone should be able to fight while riding if necessary. Yeah, teaching plans later. For now, I'm gonna kill more guys than you, Shay insisted before hurrying off, shifting into a violet light that moved easily across the lava and reforming in a dropkick to one bandit's face. Ah hey, no fair. That magic stuff is cheating. Casper called out as he hurried after her. Are those two really going to be alright? Mercedes asked, a little worried. It's fine, I'll keep them safe, Byleth answered. Now you five make sure to keep Ingrid safe. Then we can go find and kill the noble that organized this. Ah, Professor, no, never mind, we can talk about that later, Ingrid decided. Come on everyone. Let's get back to the monastery. Oh, I hope Professor Byleth is okay, Mercedes said in a worried tone, looking back down the path they'd taken to the monastery. Their group hadn't had too much trouble getting away from the bandits. Sylvain and Ash had led things for the most part, with the redhead easily breaking through the clustered bandits while the gray-haired boy shot down those that scattered. Annette and Dorothea had further helped by raining thunder and wind down on anyone coming after Ingrid, while Mercedes herself had made sure to heal any injuries that her classmates may have suffered. Their quick escape did, however, mean they had gotten away far faster than expected and the professor's team wound up being left behind. Which, yes, was the intention, but it was still concerning, which was why Mercedes had come back to watch the path while Ingrid and the others went ahead to report what happened. Well, most of the others. I wouldn't worry too much about the professor, Dorothea reassured with a smile, patting the blonde on her shoulder. She has a knack for getting out of tricky situations. I suppose. Oh, Dorothea, your hat. Oh, yeah. The songstress chuckled wryly as she patted her bare hair. It looks like I lost it in all the commotion. It's a shame, but as cute as it is, it's just a hat. Besides, I notice someone doesn't have her usual shawl either. Oh, yes, I did leave that with my horse. Well, I can retrieve it later, I am sure. She smiled at Dorothea. Hopefully before Sylvain notices and decides to make any comments. Dorothea blinked, not really expecting a remark like that from the lovely blonde, and then had a brief moment where she tried not to glance at Mercedes's chest. Judging by the slight, amused smile Mercedes had though, she noticed anyway. Alright, well, the professor has Caspi and Shezzy with her anyway, so I'm sure things will be fine. You really trust Professor Byleth, huh? Well, why wouldn't I? Things might have been a bit shaky near the start of the year, but she's proven to be quite the reliable professor. I asked her to help out and she agreed with no hesitation. She might be a bit teasing at times, but I definitely can't imagine having another professor. Sounds quite fun indeed. It makes me wonder how things would be if she was in charge of the Blue Lions, Mercedes mused, though I suppose if she was, we'd likely have been the ones going up against the Death Knight. Ah yeah, that jerk still has to pay for what he did, Dorothea said with a frown, before noticing Mercedes looking sad. Everything okay? Oh, sorry, I was just getting a bit lost in thought. Is the Death Knight really Jurutsa? Yeah? I don't know who else it could have been with how scary that guy can be, not to mention how he disappeared after the Death Knight left as well. I see, Mercedes muttered as she frowned. Something you feel like sharing? Just something I can't shake from my head. I think I might know who Jurutsa is, Mercedes said, a wistful look on her face. I think he might be my little brother, Emil. Of all things Mercedes could have said, Dorothea wasn't expecting that. Huh? You're related to him. I'm not certain, but the more I think about it, the more likely it seems, she explained. I can't help but wonder how he ended up like this. He used to be so kind and gentle. Sorry about what I said. No need to apologize. I can understand why you feel that way, Mercedes replied, a gentle smile on her face. I just hope I get the chance to meet him again. Well, I guess we'll need to find out more about those people who kidnapped Flane and Shezzy. It would be a start, Mercedes noted, before she noticed something. There they are. Turning her head, Dorothea could see the trio returning, Byleth at the front while Shay and Casper followed behind, the two in quite the animated conversation, likely about the battle they had. Behind them a trail of horses followed, one of them having Mercedes' shawl fluttering in the breeze. Hey there, Professor. Dorothea said, grinning as she waved at them. Sorry if we're late, they had a surprising amount of reinforcements, Byleth explained as she dismounted the horse. Yeah, it was wild. But we managed to beat up all the bad guys. Casper said, giving the two a thumbs up. I'm still fired up for some more. No more fighting for today, make sure to get some rest. Come on Professor, you can't tell me you're not still raring to go. PFT, if it's that big of a deal, I'm up to spar with you Casper, Shay offered. Nice. Looking forward to it. Grinning, the two made their way into the monastery as Mercedes grabbed her shawl. Thank you Professor. No need for thanks, Byleth replied as she began to lead the horses back to the stables. With nothing better to do, Dorothea followed behind her. Seems we managed to save the day, Professor. I'm glad we could help Ingrid, Byleth said, before pausing. I wanted to apologize. About what? The offer I made. I've been thinking about it, and I can understand why it would come off as insincere, Byleth said, before bowing to Dorothea. Sorry. Do you mean the one about taking care of me? Yeah. I meant it, but I can see why it wasn't a good thing to do, she continued, frowning a bit. You deserve to be with someone who loves you, and I don't even know if I can love like that. Thank you for helping me realize that Dorothea, Byleth said, looking like she would step away before she remembered something. Rummaging around in her coat, Byleth pulled out a hat, before placing it on Dorothea's head. There you go. I'm glad I could bring this back, she said, a small smile on her face before she walked away. Dorothea stared at her professor as she left, before she reached up and covered her crimson face with her hat. She took a moment to think of the fact that Byleth had been sincere in all those moments with her. She was used to empty words from those who wanted her attention, nobles who wanted her for a short time, to use for fun or even prestige before leaving her alone again. So to know Byleth wasn't teasing. She tried to ignore her beating heart and flushed face as she watched her professor walk away. Dorothea couldn't help but think of how lucky Edie was that she was a good friend. Otherwise, well, she shouldn't think about it. It wouldn't do to tempt herself into stealing her friend's crush. Chapter 69, The Gareg Mock Fishing Tournament. A fishing tournament. Byleth immediately found herself interested as she looked at Seath. Well, calling it a tournament is perhaps a bit much, the Chamberlain corrected. After what happened last month, I wanted to do something for Flane, and she requested a feast full of fish. Once I mentioned this to Rhea, she suggested making it an inter-house competition to help bolster camaraderie and to make it easier on me so I do not have to fish on my own. I see. Is it just for the students? In terms of the prize, yes. Though you are free to join if you wish. It sounds like fun, Byleth agreed, a faint smile coming to her face. I'll make sure to participate. Thank you. With his part said, he glanced down at Byleth, noting that she seemed to be wearing a rather modest sundress at the moment. I must say, your new sense of fashion has been a welcome change. Oh, thank you. Dorothea helped me pick it out. She did? I admit, that is a bit of a surprise. She's good with fashion, Byleth said with a shrug. Either way, it feels nice wearing pretty clothes. Is that so? Seath asked, receiving a nod in return. I never really thought of myself as pretty, so I never considered wearing stuff like this. Though as Dorothea said, I don't need to care about what others think and should wear what I want. I see. Well, I won't complain about your reasons for wearing such attire. I hope to see you at the fishing tourney. I'll make sure to stop by later, but I need to get some supplies from the marketplace first. With his piece said, Seath nodded before turning around and walking away. As he did, Byleth made her way to the pond, ready and eager to have fun. I must say, I never expected a fishing competition to be an event at the academy, Lawrence murmured as Byleth passed by, frowning at the fishing line he had. I can't say I have much experience with the activity, though my father has expressed some fondness for it. Really? Huh, wouldn't expect a big-time noble like him to be into something so common, Leonie replied, her own pole already ready to go. Hey, let me help you with that. No, I'm sure I can, Leonie, you don't need to aid me with this. Hey, you helped me out with that heavy lifting, so now I'm paying you back. Besides, the captain showed me how to tie a line to a hook plenty of times, so I know what I'm doing. Byleth smiled faintly as Lawrence sighed in exasperation before she moved along, idly taking in the sight of so many people gathered at the fishing pond. It seemed like almost every student was there already, along with plenty of the monastery staff and clergy. Ah, Professor, there you are. Ferdinand greeted her, fishing rod in hand as he stood next to Flane. Oh, hi Ferdinand, I didn't know you liked fishing. Well, I would not say it's part of my repertoire of skills, however I felt it only appropriate to join in to better welcome our new classmate, Ferdinand said with a grin. I also felt like this would help make up for my blunder with that gauntlet. There is no need to do that, Ferdinand, Flane responded, a bit embarrassed. I already said it was my fault for messing with that weapon. Even so, it's only right as a noble that I make it up to you. Try not to scare away the fish by being too loud, Ferdinand, Byleth warned, a bit amused as his confidence faltered for a moment. I see, well, I suppose I shall have to show the dignity of a noble and remain as quiet as I can during this tournament, Ferdinand decided with a nod before heading over to cast his line. Honestly, this is starting to feel bigger than it should be. Flane muttered as she followed behind him. Feeling a smile on her face, Byleth glanced around, seeing how everyone else was doing, glad that the students seemed to be having fun, and were even competing amongst themselves, such as Casper and Ash trying their best to catch the biggest fish. Other students, meanwhile, seemed more focused on their excitement for the food to come, like Ingrid and Raphael. Though she also couldn't help but notice the few students that weren't there. Ah, Professor, can you be helping me? Petra asked, breaking her out of her thoughts. Glancing over, she saw the young Brigid girl holding the hook for her fishing rod. I am not used to fishing in such a manner. Oh, okay, how do you normally fish? Byleth asked, as she took the rod and hook to tie it for her. In Brigid, fishing by spear or net is more common. There are also those with skill that fish with only their hands, Petra explained. I was attempting to do so, but the fishman said that was not allowed. Huh. Now I kind of want to try fishing like that. Byleth muttered as she finished tying the hook. With a quick glance, she noted how Edelgard and Hubert weren't there, though the two had been busy after class lately, so that wasn't a surprise. Do you know where Dorothea is? Ah, she said she is not a fan of the smell fish are having. Oh, really? Byleth frowned at that. They were going to have tea later, so that wasn't good. She'd just have to try to clean up before then. Thank you for telling me. Did you want some more help fishing? I believe I am good, thank you, Petra said, nodding to her before she walked over to the pond, which got Byleth to notice a different group. This is stupid, Emily grumbled as she glared at her fishing lure. On that, we are in agreement, Lysithea muttered in response. Look, I get it, it's not the funnest thing to do, but come on, it's a competition and I don't want to lose. Shay shouted, which definitely didn't help their chances since she was just scaring the fish away. A quick glance around showed that Hilda and Claude seemed to be the only golden deer not at the pond, which, there could be a few reasons for that, but for now, Byleth had a sister to check in with. Hey there you three. Having fun? No, Emily and Lysithea immediately responded, getting Shay to laugh. About as much as I can anyways, Shay said with a grin. That's good. Are Claude and Hilda not joining? Pinky isn't a fan of fishing, Emily replied. And apparently Claude doesn't see the point in joining the tournament since he can just reap the rewards later, Lysithea added with audible annoyance. Is Claude planning to steal the grand prize? Byleth asked, concerned, which earned a snort from Shay. Nah, he just means he's going to enjoy the feast once everybody else does the work. Heh, it's times like this that I remember he's a noble. She paused, before glancing at her friends. Ah, no offense. Why would I be offended? Emily asked, which seemed to take the wind out of Lysithea's sails as she went from puffing up in indignation to deflating with a faint frown. Yes, well, indeed, it would be childish to take offense from a simple comment like that. Aren't you a kid? And she immediately puffed up again at Emily's comment. Come on Em, you know she doesn't like that. Shay said, speaking up before Lysithea could as she mussed up Emily's hair. Regardless of whether I like or dislike it, it's a simple fact that I am not a child. Lysithea still complained. Alright, fine, just let go of me. Emily shouted back, trying to push Shay away while the latter had a big grin on her face the entire time. For a brief moment, Byleth wondered if she should stop the pair as they continued roughhousing. That ended as the two went tumbling into the pond, splashing Lysithea with water as they did. Maybe she should. Do not use the divine pulse for a situation like this, Suthies chided in the back of her mind, let the idiots reap what they have sown. Byleth wouldn't put it quite like that, but she did feel a little amused at seeing her sister push herself back up while spitting out a fish that had gotten into her mouth. Bleg. Ugh, does this count as catching one? GGHH, Shay, you idiot. Lysithea snapped, glaring at her apprentice while Emily came up a moment later, also with a fish in her mouth, though she seemed to be deliberately holding it there, considering she also had 2 more fish in her hands. HH. TLDY, she said through the fish in her mouth, before letting the bloodied pike drop onto the shore. See. Diving in and grabbing the fish works way better. You'd probably be very popular in Brigid, Byleth noted, which earned a confused blink from Emily. I would. Well, she's not with me. Lysithea snapped, glaring at the brunette. Do you idiots really have to roughhouse all the time? Well, we don't have to, Shay began, before pausing when she noticed a very annoyed fish keeper standing beside her sister. Hey, so. Me and Emily caught. Get out of the pond. Yes sir. And thus, Shay and Emily were banned from the fishing tournament. Well, guess it wasn't meant to be, Shay said, shrugging, before glancing at her still dripping friends. Lysithea was still actively glaring at Emily, who smirked back at her before deliberately shaking her hair out to splash the shorter girl with more water. Which prompted Lysithea to start gathering darkness in her hand, and Shay immediately stepped between them at that point. Hey. No more fighting. Kmin, how about we try out the sauna instead of hanging out here? That'd probably help dry us off at least, it's hot in there, right? That is not how. Fine, whatever. You still owe me for splashing me. Lysithea shouted as Shay began to lead the duo away. Off to the side, Byleth was apologizing to the fish keeper, who had turned his annoyance towards her. As a professor, you really should keep a better eye on the students, especially your sister. I know, I'll make sure that she doesn't do that again. Is there any way I can make up for it? Just make sure no one else goes diving in the pond, he grumbled as he walked away. Silently, Byleth found herself thankful that she wasn't banned from the pond as well. Would you have used the divine pulse if you were? Suthies needled, prompting an immediate nod from Byleth. You really are ridiculous sometimes, you know that. Byleth let out a small huff at that, before moving over to a quiet pair of students where she could fish in peace. Though it was a bit of a surprise to see Ignatz sitting next to Lindhart. Oh, hello there Professor. Hello Ignatz, are you having fun? Well, I wouldn't say that, Ignatz admitted as Byleth sat down next to him. Though it is very relaxing to be able to space out and appreciate the scenery. I guess that's something Lindhart and I agree on, haha. Byleth glanced over at Lindhart. He's asleep. Oh. Ignatz blushed at that. I guess that's egg on my face. Well, at least Lindhart doesn't seem bothered by you, Byleth said, attempting to console him as she tossed her line. Well, I suppose that's good, Ignatz replied, still visibly embarrassed as he stared back out at the water. Though I have to say, it's nice that the monastery seems more peaceful. Well, ignoring what happened with Shay and Flane I mean. Oh, you know, things don't seem as tense anymore. I might not know everything that happened between the Empire and the Kingdom, but things were certainly tense at the start of the year. And I guess, everyone being able to work together to save Flane and Shay helped fix that, at least partially anyways. Yeah, I can see that, Byleth agreed, glancing over to where Shay had walked off. For a brief moment, she thought that maybe joining the academy hadn't been a bad idea. So hey, what exactly is the grand prize for this tourney? Ah, you know, I never asked, Ignatz admitted with a sheepish grin. Oh, well, I guess it doesn't matter, Byleth said, as she felt her lure get pulled, instantly reeling it in and catching the struggling fish. With a small smile, she nodded to herself. Off to a great start already. Sighing to herself, Edelgard looked out over the tourney that seemed to be in full swing with the students enjoying themselves. A part of her was considering joining in, until her gaze landed on Byleth, fishing on the dock. It was certainly difficult, knowing that the person she held affection for and one of her closest friends were seemingly pursuing one another, yet it was something she had to accept. If anything, this situation made things easier for her since she could now focus on her own goals. Taking in a deep breath, she turned around, ready to leave. Lady Edelgard. Or she was, until she heard a familiar voice. Glancing over, she found a certain redhead that she definitely didn't expect to see approaching her. Monica? What are you doing here? Why, to see you of course. My father asked me to deliver a report to you, and I felt it only appropriate to do it in person. Edelgard paused as she realized Monica was speaking in code. I see. Well, best to discuss that right away. She gave her vassal a polite smile. It will be good for the two of us to catch up as well. You must be busy lately if you're handling business for your father. I certainly am, but it's work that I enjoy. Monica replied with a bright smile, before pouting, though it is a shame I couldn't join you in attending the academy this year. At least I get to see how lovely you look in the uniform though. Right, that part probably wasn't code. Unless it was. Either way, talking in the middle of the fishing tournament was a poor way to be discreet, so the two moved over to the currently unoccupied tea gardens. Along the way, Edelgard noted Hubert was following, as usual, and had a visible frown on his face once he noticed Monica. Ah, the tea garden. You know, I only sat out here about 23 times when I was attending, Monica noted with a faint smile upon taking a seat, pulling out a portable tea set to serve tea. 21 of which were meetings with the imperial nobles of interest attending at that time who seemed like they could be useful connections, while the remaining 2 were with alliance nobles. Aloysius Albany and Sigward Seward, to be exact. Monica, are either of those 2 relevant to our current discussion? Oh? Oh, no, I don't think they are. Ah, do you think they might be, Lady Edelgard? No, Edelgard refrained from sighing. Would you care to make your report now, Monica? Of course. Grinning, Monica reached into her satchel and brought out a stack of papers which she handed Edelgard. To begin, my father wanted me to discuss some recent findings in our land which he would graciously like to give to the imperial house. Opening the report, Edelgard found the image of an axe greeting her. Not a relic weapon, but a sacred weapon. One bearing the crest of Ceros based on the image in the corner of the page. As Monica began to talk about one thing or another to make this seem like official business, Edelgard continued to read the report on what she had found. While sacred weapons were generally not as powerful, they were no less useful than hero relics. The fact that anyone could use them without health concerns made them highly sought after, especially since if one did have the correct crest, the weapon would resonate with it and heal the wielder. The fact that this was both an axe and a weapon that resonated with the crest of Ceros was quite the added benefit. Good work, Monica, Edelgard idly said, almost missing the pleased noise Monica made at her praise. Focusing on the report, Edelgard flipped to the next page and found a sketch of Lake Tutates. She briefly paused as she noticed the words, Phantom Warriors, next to it. Apparently, there was a story in the area that involved some type of test to prove your worth, but since Monica had been alone, she chose to retreat rather than risk herself, per Edelgard's instructions. It definitely seemed worth returning to in the future. The last time Edelgard had heard of Phantom Warriors being involved in something church-related was during the Chalice of Beginnings incident. At that thought, her mind drifted back to that event, and how evident it was that corruption ran rampant in the church. How else could they explain how Aelfric was able to do all he did without notice? If Rhea had been a better leader, such events would not have happened. Lady Eisner's body would have been buried, thus ensuring her professor never had to deal with the trauma of finding her mother's corpse down there. She also wouldn't have been kidnapped as a result and had to deal with whatever insane ramblings Aelfric had. Your Highness. Monica spoke up, breaking her out of her thoughts. Oh, sorry Monica. Did you say something? I wanted to ask if everything was okay. You haven't had any tea and you're gripping the report rather tightly. You only do such a thing when you have something heavy weighing down on your mind. Ah, my apologies. Much has happened during my time at the academy, Edelgard responded, grabbing her cup of tea to drink. The bergamot flavor did help calm her down slightly as she tried to push past her thoughts. Oh, would you care to talk about them? I'm always glad to assist in any way I can, Lady Edelgard. It's nothing Monica. Why don't we just focus on your report? You did come all the way out to the monastery, so I would hate to ignore why you came here. Oh certainly. Do you have anything specific you would like to ask about? Monica asked while scooting her chair closer so she could flip the page for Edelgard. I actually found this page pretty interesting. Sure, it's just some details on market trends, but you never know what you can find on sale. Such as a relic, apparently. Curiously, it was one that wasn't listed in any official records, according to Monica's gathered notes, which also included the detail that her father, Baron Oaks, had managed to find the strange pair of gauntlets through an underground market. Edelgard made a mental note to utilize Baron Oaks' black market connections more often, if it could get access to items like this. This is a curious marking. Isn't it though? I don't recognize it, which makes it absolutely fascinating. Monica said with a bright smile. Understandable, given Edelgard had tasked Monica with investigating crest-related matters and the redhead had taken that as a reason to memorize every single crest on record. I do. This is a crest of the Apostles, Edelgard noted, Chevalier, specifically. Oh? Oh how amazing, Lady Edelgard. I should have expected you would recognize it on sight. Edelgard cleared her throat. I know who could use it. He would need to be hired. Understood. I will prepare blackmail at once. No, not like that. She paused. The man in question is fairly shameless, so I don't think that would even work that well. Ah, but leaving that aside, how did your travels go? Very well. I actually visited Duke Girth recently and he was nice enough to give me a lovely accessory. I'm not sure I can wear it though. It doesn't seem quite right for me, Monica continued, turning another page and pointing at another relic. One meant to be worn on the hand, from the look of things, though it wasn't like the gauntlets from earlier. Apparently it was found over in Dada of all places. Perhaps you could find a use for it, Your Highness. Perhaps. It wasn't likely though. Judging from the crest symbol sketched on the page, it would work with Yuri's crest, and he wasn't what Edelgard would consider reliable. Balthus wasn't either, but he could at least be hired. Maybe Yuri could too, but, well, at the very least she could keep the relic out of his hands. Do give my regards to Duke Girth if you're in his territory again. Gladly, Lady Edelgard. As a loyal subject, I'm sure he would be very happy to hear from you. For a brief moment, Edelgard remembered a point before the school year, where she had an opportunity to speak with the Minister of Foreign Affairs. She recalled quite easily how deeply the man had bowed his head as he choked out an apology for what happened to her siblings. If she'd allowed it, she was certain he would have prostrated himself on the floor for it. Guilt wasn't something Edelgard liked to use, but if it could keep someone on her side instead of supporting another insurrection. I'm sure, is there anything else of note? Quite, I also found a lovely book and necklace, though I don't think either are for me, Monica continued, as Edelgard turned the page, finding the image of a tome and a gem set into a necklace, both of which had the crest of La Mine. Well, Jaritza likely wouldn't be able to use the tome, but the gem could be useful to him, though. Mercedes did have the crest of La Mine, a possible avenue to explore in the future. Oh, and recently we managed to gain a contract with an Anna, and her connections will definitely be useful in the future. I see, good work Monica, Edelgard praised again, getting Monica to beam in response. Oh, hello there, are you Edie's friend? Blinking, the two glanced over to see Dorothea approaching. Oh my, are you the mystical songstress, Lady Dorothea? Monica said, getting up and approaching the student. Heh, I take it that you're a fan then? Dorothea asked, a bit amused. Of course. There's no girl in the Empire who isn't a fan of you. When Lady Edelgard mentioned you were attending the Academy this year, I couldn't help but feel saddened that I wasn't able to wait a year before attending. Oh, Edie wrote about me? Dorothea asked as she glanced at Edelgard, who felt a tad embarrassed. Of course. Of the 10 letters I have received from her since she arrived at the Academy, she has mentioned you in 7 of them. And now Edelgard felt all the more embarrassed. Really? It didn't help that Dorothea seemed far more amused now. Of course, the only people she has mentioned more are Hubert, who was mentioned in each letter, and a Professor Eisner, who was mentioned in 9 letters. Edelgard felt incredibly grateful that Monica was looking away so she couldn't see how flustered she looked. Oh, really? The professor gets mentioned in almost every letter. Dorothea grinned over at Edelgard. Should I assume the only one she wasn't in was from the start of the year, before she arrived? Edelgard cleared her throat. Dorothea, Monica, it's impolite to discuss my mail. Oh, sorry Your Highness. Monica immediately apologized, though she paused when she noticed the hint of pink at Edelgard's cheeks. Sorry Edie. My apologies Lady Dorothea, but you really should refer to Lady Edelgard by her proper title, Monica said, looking away from Edelgard. She can refer to me as she wishes, Monica, Edelgard stated, calming down a little. And if we're talking about proper titles, there's no need to call me Lady, Dorothea added, I'm just a commoner, after all. Even so, you're an inspiration. Monica insisted, so it's only right that I refer to you as such. Well, I suppose if it means that much to you. Though I would still prefer just being called by my name. Well, okay then, Dorothea. Thanks money Dorothea said with a grin, making Monica blush from the nickname. Glad I could meet one of Edie's friends. Oh, and no, I would never presume to be Lady Edelgard's friend. I simply wish to do my best as her vassal. There's no need to call yourself just my vassal Monica. You're a treasured ally, Edelgard praised, instantly making Monica flustered, which amused Dorothea in turn. Well, since you're here, would you like to meet Professor Byleth? I'm sure you're curious about how she is in person, Dorothea offered. Oh, well, I will admit, I am a bit curious, Monica admitted. Then I believe she'll still be by the pond if you wish to see her. For now I think I'll return to my room to finish reading this report, Edelgard said, standing up as she finished her tea. Oh, you don't want to come with us, Edie? I have official business I need to attend to, so that takes priority. Edelgard explained, before walking away, getting Dorothea to sigh. Dorothea, if you don't mind me asking, has anything happened to Lady Edelgard recently? Monica asked, nothing in her latest letters have informed me of what could be putting her in such a bad mood. Well, it might have something to do with our professor. What? Has this Professor Eisner been harassing her? Dorothea huffed in amusement at the redhead's scandalized tone. No, of course not. The problem is that Edie has been avoiding her, mainly because of her feelings. Excuse me. Monica paused as she remembered the face Edelgard had after mentioning the professor. Does Lady Edelgard? Yup, and for some reason she's acting as if such a thing is impossible. Monica frowned at that. Her Highness has been through much, so that is not a surprise. She is not one to be easy on herself. Edie does seem to act like she has the weight of the world on her shoulders. That's because she does. Monica declared, before realizing she'd been a little too enthusiastic. I mean, as the future emperor, there is much she'll need to be ready for, though it often means she has to neglect her own care as a result. Dorothea sighed. Yeah, that seems like Edie. Though I have to admit, I'm surprised you seem to be taking this so well. I mean, your own crush seems pretty obvious to me. Well, just because I've accepted Lady Edelgard might have a crush doesn't mean I've given up. And besides, I still need to make sure that Professor Eisner is worthy. Worthy of what? Byleth asked as she walked by, getting the two girls to look over, and pause as they saw her carrying 4 buckets full of fish. Professor, what's with all the fish? A cart broke in front of the entrance to the dining hall, so I had to take the long way around to take this to the kitchen, Byleth explained, before she suddenly realized something, and took a step back. Sorry about that. About what? You don't like the smell of fish, right? We might need to reschedule our tea time later as well, since I'll probably smell like this for a bit. Byleth muttered before she glanced at the redhead. Do you like how fish smell? PFT Professor, I don't think most people would have an answer to suddenly being asked that. They don't? Byleth asked, a bit surprised. I guess I'm just used to it. Though at least I haven't tried catching fish with my mouth. Monica was aware that the professor had eccentricities thanks to the letters she had received, but that had been overshadowed by how Edelgard had described her as a confident warrior, a skilled teacher, and a master tactician. Now that she met her in person though, Monica couldn't help but wonder if Lady Edelgard had been too generous in her descriptions. No, she shouldn't doubt Her Highness. Even if this professor was a complete weirdo, if Lady Edelgard said she was capable, then she was definitely capable. At the very least, she was certainly a very capable fisher. You're not a student here, Byleth noted, pulling Monica from her thoughts. My apologies, I haven't introduced myself. Monica curtsied, smiling at Lady Edelgard's favored professor. My name is Monica von Oaks, heiress of House Oaks. It is nice to meet you, Professor Byleth Eisner. Hi there, did you want to join the academy? Oh, well, while I would love to be in Her Highness's class, I already graduated last year. Oh, is that a problem? Balthus graduated before and he's attending again. Monica paused. She genuinely considered the idea of joining the academy again, perhaps longer than she should have, before shaking it off. My apologies, but I have very important business that I have to do outside of the academy for Her Highness, so I cannot attend once again. Oh. Monica had to admit, she couldn't help but feel a bit bad at how disappointed the professor sounded. Well, okay, feel free to drop by whenever you want to. Believe me, if I could, I would drop by at least once a month. As it stands, however, I have to content myself with just receiving letters from Her Highness. I see. Thank you for helping Edelgard. Monica had to admit, it was a bit impressive she was able to bow without dropping any of the fish. Now if you'll excuse me, I need to take these to the kitchen staff. With that, she walked past them into the dining hall. I must admit, she is certainly not how I expected her to be. Yeah, that's the professor for you. First impressions are very misleading when it comes to her. Dorothea thought for a moment before wincing. And I suppose second impressions too, since we completely misunderstood her. Yes, Lady Edelgard has mentioned such in her letters. Granted, in that situation, the second impression was the belief that the professor might be working with her enemies, before the next letter let Moinka know she was wrong. Even Lady Edelgard could make mistakes on a rare occasion. Even then, the fact that she admitted it and learned from it just made her all the more impressive. So, since the professor and Edie are going to be busy, did you want me to show you around? Oh, there's no need to. I completely memorized the layout of Gareg Mach when I was here, Monica said, before continuing at Dorothea's confused look. I have a perfect memory, so I can memorize anything. For example, I might have only seen you perform once, but I can fully remember the play you performed in despite it being 3 years, 2 months, and 5 days since I've seen it. Oh? So you remember all the details? Of course I do. I mean, I didn't get a good seat at the opera house, so I wasn't able to get a good view of the stage, but I remember everything about the performance. The specific play was Broken Moon Pearl, and I love your portrayal of Lady Tomar. Two loves split apart by destiny with only a magic pearl being the only connection they had left had me in tears. You even managed to improvise expertly when your co-lead forgot his lines. Ah, does the goddess take your voice away to punish us? I don't think there was a dry eye in the crowd that night. Dorothea blinked in the face of the redhead's enthusiasm, then giggled. Oh my, I didn't think I'd meet such a huge fan today. It's a shame you haven't been able to see more of my shows. I would love to see you in the audience again sometime. At her words, Monica couldn't help but blush as the songstress teased her. Well, thank you for the kind words. If I ever have the chance to visit the opera house again, I'll make sure to take it. You could always ask Edie, I'm sure she could get you some tickets easily. Oh, I would hate to impose on Her Highness like that. Though I'll do my best to visit when you return to the opera house and cheer you on. Is that so? Well, in that case I'll make sure to cheer you on too, though I hope you don't mind that I'm helping Edie with her crush as well. Oh, of course not. While I will of course want to make sure whoever Lady Edelgard pursues is worthy of her, she is free to love who she wishes, no matter how many they may be. Now it was Dorothea's turn to get flustered. While Lady Edelgard isn't one for traditions, it is common for the Emperor to take on several spouses. So if she wishes to follow said tradition, then I will ensure to vet any and all potential candidates. Well, you're certainly quite open. Ahem. Dorothea pretended to clear her throat, before giving Monica a little glance. And, do you happen to be interested in Edie too? Oh, I adore Lady Edelgard. If she allowed me to, I would cherish her for all my days. But if she's interested in someone else, that's fine. I just need to make sure they're good enough for her, and if they're not, well, I don't doubt Her Highness's judgment, but I will be forced to work with Hubert to deal with a problem like that, so you can understand why it might be annoying. Dorothea blinked. Do you have a problem with Hubie? Oh, so many problems, yes. Him, and to a lesser extent Ferdinand, get to be at her side at all times, while I have to content myself with rare visits, as I am just from a barony. While I am glad to be able to help Her Highness, I can't help but think I'd be able to better help her if I were at her side. So, you're jealous of them? I would not put it like that, but I suppose that is a fair observation, Monica mumbled, though Her Highness has allowed me to join her inner circle, I only wish I could do more for her. Especially after all she has been through. Yeah, what happened to her family was horrible. Monica kept quiet, as her mind instantly brought forth memories of the past. Of how angry Edelgard had been when she stood by her uncle. It was before her father had become Baron, her own uncle had not yet died in the war that was just then starting, and the false Arundel along with Duke Aegir had called a gala to announce the new crown princess. Some people might regard it as strange to be blessed with a perfect memory. As far as Monica understood it, memories became hazy over time. Lady Edelgard, for instance, confessed to her at one point that she remembered nothing of her time in Faerghus, given that it had been overwhelmed by her memories of, well, Monica disliked thinking of that time. She hadn't experienced it herself, but she remembered the haunted look on Her Highness's face with complete clarity. It was during that gala that Monica noticed things were different with Lord Arundel. The way he spoke, the look in his eyes, how he picked up a wine glass with his right hand instead of his left like he had before when attending a function at her uncle's castle, a gathering of minor lords that hailed from the western half of Adrestia and hoped to gain further influence through the brother of the emperor's consort. He was friendlier then. Well-mannered, but not arrogant. Not like the man who had stolen his face and talked so readily and merrily with Duke Aegir right after the demise of most of the imperial family. It was after his impostor's death that Monica talked to Lady Edelgard again, mentioned her suspicions, and Her Highness recognized how useful she could be. And once they really started talking, well, Monica could admit, in the privacy of her own mind, that it wasn't long before she had fallen for the future emperor. Money, is everything okay? Dorothea asked, breaking her out of her memory. Oh, my apologies, it's easy to get lost in the past for me sometimes. Right, because of your memory. Yes, though I am thankful for this memory, especially since it means I can write down all of Lady Edelgard's exploits in the future. While I'm sure there will be countless plays and stories about her, I want to make sure there is at least one written account that has no embellishments or falsehoods. Is that so? Well, I'm sure Edie would appreciate that more than the opera I teased her about. Oh? Were you planning on writing one for her? I might have made up a couple lines on the spot, but I'm not a playwright by any means. Though I imagine if I was you would want to go over anything I wrote. Only to make sure it shines a proper light on Lady Edelgard, though I imagine as one of her closest friends you wouldn't write anything negative about her. Edie might be a bit too serious for her own good sometimes, but I can assure you I wouldn't say anything bad about her. I'm very glad to hear that. Ah, actually, if you're not busy, do you mind telling me more about her time at the Academy? While Lady Edelgard has told me about major events, I want to make sure I don't miss anything. Well, since everyone is busy with that fishing tourney, I might as well spend some time with you. I'll do my best to fill in the gaps, Dorothea agreed with a grin. Though that changed to a confused expression as Byleth walked out of the dining hall. Specifically, she had walked out while carrying several different plates, all filled with different fish dishes, including a plate balanced upon her head. Professor, what are you doing? Taking these dishes to eat? All of them? No, half of them are for Flayn. For a small moment, Monica could have sworn she seemed smug there. She told me I was the best. With her piece said, Byleth walked off, making sure to give the two a wide berth as she did. Monica had to admit, it was almost impressive how she could easily carry so many plates, as it was far more than she had seen head maids carry. It also made her wonder if she should start being a tad more eccentric if this was Lady Edelgard's type. Letting out a satisfied sigh, Shay walked out of the sauna as she stretched her arms. That felt great. I'll take your word on it, Arvel muttered, following behind her as always. Ugh, how could you like that torture? Emily asked, her face still flushed with heat. You didn't have to stay if you didn't like it. As if I would admit defeat. Humph, so who's the childish one now? Lysithea snarked, even as her skin remained reddened as well. You're lucky I'm not in the mood to argue, Emily grumbled. Good, now then, since I have no intention of rejoining that fishing tourney, I'm heading to the dining hall for some cake. What's that? Lysithea immediately stopped in her tracks, before staring straight at Emily, who blinked at the sudden attention. You don't know what cake is? For all her faults, even Emily could recognize when she said something that would blow her cover. No, I know what it is, it just slipped my mind because of the heat. I don't have it often. You don't? Don't tell me you're like Felix. Oh, I know what's going on. Emily doesn't really eat the food here often, Shay explained. I guess she likes cooking for herself? Either way, she probably doesn't know how to make cakes. Yeah, that, Emily said, thankful that Shay covered for her. I don't even like them that much. What? Emily was starting to realize she should have done a bit more effort in trying to keep her cover. Right, we're fixing this. Fixing what? Emily asked, confused as Lysithea walked away, expecting them to follow. Guess we're following her. Shay said, walking behind Lysithea, getting Emily to huff as she followed her. Soon enough, they arrived at the dining hall, which seemed to be full of people bringing in buckets full of fish. Okay, you two wait at a table, I'll have the cake ready soon. Lysithea ordered as she went into the cooking area. Well, might as well get something to eat while we wait, Shay muttered as she looked around the bustling dining hall, before grinning. Oh, hey Dudu. Are you on cooking duty today? Hello Shay, Emily. No, I'm just making some fish stew for His Highness. He felt bad that he wasn't able to participate without accidentally cracking a fishing pole, the giant said as he stirred a pot, before nodding over to the side. Mercedes is the one on cooking duty. Glancing over, Shay saw the gentle lion apparently assisting Lysithea. Well, alright then, mind if we have some stew? If you would like, Dudu said, before he grabbed some nearby bowls to serve the two. Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Emily muttered as she immediately grabbed her spoon to eat some. Dudu Molinaro. If anyone ever insults you again, tell me and I'll stab them for you. Dudu wasn't sure if that was a compliment or not. I think we have underestimated how violent your friend is, Arvel muttered, faintly disturbed, though one side of them was also somewhat impressed. "Emily, I think you can just say it tastes good," Shay muttered while Emily walked away so she could eat the rest of her stew at a table. Emily mumbled something in return, her mouth full of stew. "Seriously, what kind of food do you eat back home?" Shay asked as she ate, albeit at a slower rate. "We didn't really eat," Emily managed to get out. "We only had these nutrient things. Flavor wasn't really that important." "Oh, well, I'm glad I helped you eat the food here," Shay said with a grin. She had no idea what a nutrient thing was, but probably some weird vegetable. "There you go," Lysithea said, as she suddenly placed a slice of cake in front of Emily, before placing one by Shay as well. "I guarantee this will help you change your mind on cakes." Frowning a bit, Emily reached over to get some. "Don't use the spoon you used for the stew. I brought you the fork for a reason." "Geez, someone's in a bad mood," Emily muttered as she put the spoon down, before grabbing the fork to eat some cake. And her eyes widened as she placed a forkful in her mouth. Emily, all good there?" Shay asked, a little concerned by the stunned look on her friend's face. "Is this what soft tastes like?" "What?" Emily didn't answer her. She was too busy shoveling the cake into her mouth. "I think you converted her, Lysithea." "Humph. Of course. Everyone should love cake," Lysithea declared with a smug smile. "Well, it is a good cake," Shay agreed as she ate her own slice, "makes me wish I could have it every day." Lysithea paused as she heard that, feeling her face warm up as she looked away. She let out a quiet huff as she tried to calm herself. Honestly, she could stand to be a little less honest, Lysithea thought to herself. Even if that was something she liked about the silly mercenary. Chapter 70, Dealing with Disputes. "Ah, Shay, there you are." Blinking as she heard Lawrence calling out to her, the merc looked up from her book and over to see the noble approaching her and Lysithea as they sat in the gardens. "I've been looking for your sister. Do you perchance know where she may be?" "Oh, she went on a mission with Eloise and Shamir. Something about Almiran pirates," Shay answered as she closed the tome she was reading. "Why, what's up?" "Ah, that's a shame. I can understand why a task like that would take importance, but I was hoping to recruit her assistance for a mission of my own." "Well, hey, if you need any help, I'm up for it," Shay declared, hopping to her feet. Hey. I thought we were studying together," Lysithea protested, pouting as she got up. "While I would hate to intrude upon you two seeking to better yourselves, I will admit that having your assistance will be quite the boon," Lawrence said with a smile. "You see, there is a land dispute that my father asked me to handle. It seems Akiran has gotten quite big for his britches and wants to push some old claim that could hardly be considered valid at this point." "Oh, that dude," Shay recalled, frowning. "He tried to skip out on paying us once." "Yes, that does sound like him," Lawrence sighed. "Honestly, when will he stop causing problems?" Lysithea huffed. "So, are we going to beat him up then?" "Well, officially my father only asked me to handle the dispute. Though if Archeron seeks to use force, well, I suppose it would only be right we respond with force, no?" "Ha, I like the way you think, Lawrence." "Thank you. Now then, I suppose we should ask the rest of our house if they're willing to help." "Yeah, it's probably our only option, since Bai took her class with her, and the Lions are apparently dealing with a gang up over where Sylvain's territory is. Well, if nothing else, that brute Balthus will be useful. He mentioned being indebted to my father, so it's only fair he works it off," Lawrence decided as the trio went to find their classmates. "Hopefully they were willing to help. So why exactly don't you just get rid of this guy? If he's trying to take your territory then he has to go," Emily stated as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. To be fair, it was a question most of their group was considering as they traveled to the disputed territory. "Ah, Lady Emily. I understand that, coming from Adrestia, you may have very different ideas of how the aristocracy is meant to be treated in the event of a dispute. In Leicester, the nobility is meant to be equal. We cannot simply execute one of our own because of a minor dispute," Lawrence explained. "Wouldn't it be more convenient if he was dead though?" It would in the short term, but we can't do that without it being more inconvenient down the line, he elaborated. He is technically in his right to bring up this dispute, so unless he goes too far, the most we can do is drive him off. Yeah, the alliance would fall apart if they were at each other's throats for every single dispute that happened. Heck, we'd probably already be at 5 wars already thanks to Claude and Lawrence alone, Balthus said with a bark of laughter. I would not go that far, Lawrence replied with a slight frown. Claude and I may have our disagreements, but nothing he has said has ever warranted an outright war for the sake of my honor. And what about what you've said to him? Leone asked with some obvious humor. Humph. If my simple criticisms of our house leader were enough to drive him to seek military retribution, then he has clearly shown he is unworthy of any leadership position. Speaking of, where is Claude? Raphael asked, looking around for the house leader. Claude and Hilda are helping Professor Byleth, Raphael, Ignatz explained. Apparently he was interested in what the Amirans were up to. Oh, that makes sense, Raphael said with a big grin. Well, at least he's finally taking his duties seriously, Lawrence muttered. Maybe he'll finally have something commendable about him. Hey, Lawrence, you said we can't kill that noble guy unless he goes too far, right? Emily asked, before pointing ahead of them. Does that count as too far? Looking ahead, Lawrence paused when he saw the vast amount of soldiers Acheron brought. Did the man bring his entire personal force for this? Lawrence wondered, a bit stupefied. He truly is a fool. So is that blonde-haired twig the one we have to go after? Emily asked, spotting Archeron off in the distance. Accurate, and yup, Shay said, pulling out her swords. Well, in that case, I'll go get him. The rest of you kids can stay here, Balthus declared, cracking his knuckles as an excited grin spread across his face. Gotta work off my debt somehow. Don't call me a kid. Lysithea snapped, though her protest was drowned out by Emily's shout. Hey, you're not the only one who's gonna have some fun. We are not here to have fun, and I refuse to stay behind while you throw yourself into the heat of battle. I was the one to ask you to come along, so I'll be the one to handle Archeron. Lawrence stated, frowning as he stared at the infamous weather vane of a noble in the distance. Heh, guess that means we know who's going on the offensive. Grinning, Shay glanced over at Leone. You're in charge of defending this location, got it, Leone? Don't worry, I'll make the captain proud. I'm sure you will. And you mind staying with her, Lys? I figure you can keep the fort safe from anyone that gets too close. Humph, of course I can, Lysithea stated, glowering up at her student. Just get going already. Heh, come on Ignatz, can't let them do all the work. Raphael encouraged with a big grin. Alright. Fine then. Lawrence decided, those of you who wish to press the attack, with me. We'll seize the drawbridges and cut off the routes his forces can take until we are ready to seize Acheron himself. Remember, we need not kill him. Once his escape is cut off, the coward will most assuredly surrender. Got it, boss. Shay said, grinning over at her classmate before quickly charging the first enemy soldier she saw. As the startled axe wielder went down in a spray of blood, Emily huffed in a mix of amusement and annoyance. Don't think I'll let you get ahead of me. Wow, and I thought I could be competitive, Leone commented as she watched the brunette jam her saber into a swordsman's throat and rip it through his neck. Lysithea huffed in annoyance, prepping a pair of spells as she saw the enemy starting to rally as they realized they were being attacked. Trust me, you haven't seen how annoying those two can get when they're trying to train. I don't know, I've gone up against Shay a few times so I think I have a good idea of it. For now though, she decided to pull out her bow and nocked an arrow before sending it flying into an enemy mage's chest. Do you feel like keeping count of how many you get? I see you and Shay share some habits. That's not a no. Humph. I'll handle double the enemies you manage to strike down. I'm starting to think some of our classmates are way too competitive, Ignatz commented with some concern as he saw the duo of Shay and Emily get joined by Balthus, who seemed more than eager to crush some bones with his fists. Yeah, they are. Raphael agreed with a big grin, doesn't it make you want to get right in there with them? Ah, that's not exactly, oh okay, he's already heading in, Ignatz sighed as his friends continued smashing and slicing their way through the enemy before deciding to focus on supporting them where possible. Starting by aiming for an enemy Pegasus Knight, who Leonie just shot off her steed and into the river. "Ha! That's another one for me," the exuberant redhead called out, echoed by an irritated response from Lysithea and followed by screams of pain as the young mage let loose her frustrations on the enemy in the form of flesh-melting dark magic and swarms of summoned insects. "I'd say I should join the defensive team, but I don't think they need the help," Ignatz muttered to himself, before trying to find something to do as his friends continued decimating the enemy forces. Meanwhile, across the river, a certain lord named Akiran Lethe Phlegathon was having to rapidly reassess his life choices as he watched his forces getting outright slaughtered by schoolchildren. "What are you people doing?" he practically screeched. "They're just some academy brats. How are you losing?" "Oh goddess, the bugs are eating my eyes," answered one of his goons, who was having a very bad day. Akiran cringed at that gruesome response, then shook his head. "Alright, this can still be salvaged, I haven't lost yet. I just need to, aha." He grinned as he saw two of his men returning from raiding the nearby towns. "Excellent. As long as I can get something out of..." And the one on the left was promptly punched so hard by the blonde brute that he flew into and through a nearby tree. "Aha! That's another one for me, Balthus. Ah, damn, I'm gonna lose my bet at this rate." "They're making bets?" Akiran asked with genuine offense, before shaking it off. "No, never mind, I still have. Why is he dead too?" The second thief had no answer for the weather vane because he was face down in the dirt with an arrow sticking out of his head. And no, I can most certainly still salvage. "Hello Akiran." Akiran screeched, whirling to face the heir of Gloucester as Lawrence leveled a spear at him. Why you? What is this supposed to be, You can't honestly think a tiny brat like you could possibly kill me." Lawrence, who was visibly taller than Akiran, didn't even bother with a sigh or a frown. "You have no right to be here, Akiran. You can still walk away though and retain some dignity as a noble." "Ha! You have no idea who you're dealing with. I can easily take down a brat like you." Akiran flung his hand out, casting a fireball that soared past Lawrence completely as the violet-haired noble moved right in and smashed the butt of his spear into the side of Akiran's head, sending him straight to the ground. "Ugh. Oh ow, oh goddess, am I bleeding?" Akiran touched his head, then nearly fainted as he felt a trace of blood there. "Arg. Wait, I give up. I lose. I surrender. Please don't kill me." Lawrence was too dignified to sigh in this situation. Emily, however, was not, and outright scoffed as she walked up. "We're seriously sparing this guy after all that? We can't just push him in the river and claim he drowned." "No, Lady Emily, that would still cause more problems than it solves. Even if it would be remarkably satisfying. For now, I need to take this man and go see my father." "Good work everyone, I'll make sure you're all well rewarded for your help here," Lawrence said, before hoisting Archeron up to pull him along while the remaining soldiers either surrendered or absconded. "Ha, speaking of rewards, I'm pretty sure I ended up taking out the most guys," Balthus boasted. "So guess that means I win. Weren't you just complaining about losing the bet to Raphael?" Shay asked as she glanced at the burly blonde. "How many did you take out, big guy?" Honestly I forgot to keep track, so guess I don't win." As usual, the cheery guy didn't seem that bothered. Not like it mattered. "Clearly I was the one who took out the most," Emily stated. "You sure?" "Pretty sure Shay took out more people while you dealt with the stragglers," Leonie teased, getting the minor noble to scowl. I didn't take out as many, but I did deal with one of the thieves, so that has to count for something, right?" Ignatz asked. "I can't believe all of you are arguing over something as foolish as this," Lysithea complained with a frown. "Quite right, there is no need for such squabbling," Lawrence said, before grinning. "Though for the record, taking the enemy commander is worth extra points if we are using the Battle of Eagle and Lion as our point system." Archeron could only stare in horror as he watched the students bicker amongst themselves about who had won. What kind of monsters had they let into the academy this year, though? Maybe he could take this chance to sneak away. Said attempt was quickly foiled as the orange-haired commoner used the end of her spear to trip him, making him fall and break his nose as he hit the ground. Ah, I'm bleeding again. Goddess save me. That time Lawrence did let out a sigh, briefly wondering if he should take Emily's suggestion to let him drown. Some time later after they returned to the monastery, Lawrence happily drank his tea, relaxing after the battle, before his peaceful moment was interrupted as someone sat across from him. Hey there Lawrence, heard you were busy while I was gone, Claude noted, his usual smile on his face. Just a simple land dispute, nothing I couldn't handle, Lawrence responded. So you say, but I heard your father also ended up giving you the relic of House Gloucester. Is that jealousy I hear in your voice? Lawrence asked with a smirk. Even if I was jealous, it's not like I can use it, Claude shot back. Ha. Then it's good that you can acknowledge you can't do everything, he replied as he sipped his tea. And, well, if nothing else I can commend you for actually helping Professor Eisner against those Almiran pirates. Oh, those weren't Almirans. Just some normal bandits calling themselves Almirans. Really? Lawrence asked, before sighing as he shook his head. Honestly, how foolish could those bandits be? Well, that's a surprise. Almost thought you wouldn't believe me. I wouldn't say I trust you, but I am willing to admit that things would have been a disaster if those bandits went too far. It's one thing to deflect the Almirans at Fodlan's throat, but if they had been able to launch a successful strike on Deirdre, well, war would be inevitable, Lawrence assumed, before letting out another sigh. All while those bandits got away, their pockets lined with stolen riches, none the wiser of what their actions caused. You know, that may just be the smartest thing I've heard you say. Humph, you're quite lucky I'm in a good mood. Now, if you're not going to join me for tea, I ask you to leave me alone. What, not going to ask Emily to another tea party? Shame though it might be, she is not a fan of tea, and prefers coffee instead. She sadly fails to notice the subtle intricacies of a fine brewed cup of tea. Well, I'm not busy, so might as well keep you company. I did want to discuss some plans for the upcoming battle, and as it turns out, Hilda isn't a fan of planning. Lawrence paused. And you wish to discuss those plans with me? I did just say that, didn't I? You did. My apologies, your offer simply caught me off guard. Hey, we might argue sometimes, but I know you're a smart guy, Lawrence. That, and I'm pretty sure you learned your lesson about noble duels on the battlefield after last time. Lawrence faked a cough to try to hide his embarrassment. Yes, well, I would say there is precedent for nobility to deliberately seek out one-on-one matches on the battlefield in order to dash. Are those matches usually interrupted by random mercs wandering in? Not typically, so you can understand my surprise when it did happen. He sighed, then his smirk returned to his face. Though I will note that this time we do have that exact mercenary on our side. That we do. So how about we start off with that? Claude grinned. What do you think is the best way to use our mercenary friend? Check the description for the links to the author.